Hello, everyone. Welcome to earlier Tuesday night, 5:30 our Eastern time. Thank you for showing up early. I get to be a mom at a track meet watching my son pole vault starting like now. So we are doing the show a little bit early. Thanks for those that are tuning in. Great to see the folks from Minnesota and South Dakota and New York. Thank you for checking in. We do have a great conversation we're going to have tonight. Thanks in part to all of your comments that you guys had about our recent video on YouTube about cholesterol and how rewarding you guys found it, how helpful you found it. So thank you for putting those comments out there. They really do help me pick the content for the live shows. So when I see you guys interested, I try to turn into that spin and give you a little bit more. And I thought I would tie that into a question that I get a lot, which is, Doc, I'm on the ketogenic diet. I'm worried about my cholesterol. When should I check it? Or should I check it? Yes, you should check it, but there are some definite limitations on what you need to think about before you do that. We are going to use a case study tonight that gives you some insight. And for those of you that are going to see me in Texas this upcoming season, you're going to see this case live out to do a lot of teachable moments. So we're going to use the first part of it tonight. Before we get carried away, we are going to do the basics here, which is check my numbers. So I think I'm like, I don't know, 56 hours or something into a fast. And I am checking ketones and glucose here. So we'll get ketones counting down for a 10-second countdown starting, there you go, 9, 8, 7. And then the glucose only takes 5 seconds, but if I do it right, they both almost turn out at the same time. Ketone 3.2, glucose 58. I can't wait. After my Tuesday night lives, if I feel hungry, which I do when my blood sugar is 58, I treat myself to some carnivore crisps, and I have my last little bag of crumbs tonight that they're sitting right here. I'm like, I can't wait to do this. I put extra salt on them. I have beef heart left, and I'm going to go chew on some beef heart while I watch my son pretend he knows how to fly, which is another name for pole vault. And I will... If you don't follow me on Instagram, you're going to want to follow me on Instagram because you can usually see me chirping about what he's up to recently. So, all right. Thanks for doing that DVR. Deb, it is a DVR of 18.1. I am going to have some pucker up. Again, not because I need help making ketones, but to show you this is if you're gonna pinch and you are looking for how do you get ketones out of the ditch, or how do you help yourself, I don't know, recover from when your sister's in town and you have an extra glass of wine that you shouldn't have the next morning. You should do this. You should do this. All right, so we do have this big question. We are going to get to it. I have a few different announcements that I'm going to sprinkle throughout this lesson because it's going to get a little heady. And of course, your questions that you write in truly help me. We already have one of them, a really good question from Private Susie. So know that your question's first on the list. Thanks for typing it in. And I am going to get right into the lesson. And then when I need a break, because it is a lot. It is a lot to go through tonight. And I do want you to appreciate a couple of things that are not easy to explain. So I'm going to start by going here, and you know how you build a plane while flying it? Sometimes that's how I feel like my slides for these shows are, that as I get ready for a stage presentation, they're very well done. But when I get ready for my lives, sometimes I'm like, yeah, we're close enough. We're ready enough. All right, so I am going to start by talking about the difference between a lipid panel and something else. Because, yes, there are some absolute rules that I follow with my patients when it comes to not only advising them about cholesterol, but preparing that if I'm not your doctor, there are a few things that you should help your doctor with when it comes to a cholesterol panel. So let me get out of there, and we're going to start here. I'm going to start by introducing you to just to some particles. The particles are what, if we could start the conversation over when it comes to cholesterol, we would not use words like bad cholesterol or good cholesterol or small cholesterol. Well, we might use the word small, but we wouldn't use low density, very low density, high density. We would have some better descriptors, but the history lesson that comes with talking about cholesterol really does make this a lot more confusing. So when looking at someone's cholesterol, oh, there we go. So this is called a carrying agent. This is what carries cholesterol around. It is one of many lipoproteins. And when you look deep inside this carrying agent, there is a cholesterol unit in it. But most of what's inside this carrying agent, called a lipoprotein, are these little red things. In my diagrams, I have the top part as red because it's a glucose, and then there's 3 strings of fat that come from it. That's a triglyceride. And that's what's in most of these carrying agents, these lipoproteins. When you look at the first thing, the biggest of them, which is only present for a few minutes after you eat in your circulation, this is called a chylomicron. Now, we don't have anything on our blood tests that measure chylomicron. In fact, sometimes when I send blood to the lab, if they have a bunch of chylomicrons in their lab, the lab tech will write back saying a whole bunch of fat was found on top, meaning they just probably ate a fatty meal, or they have a genetic disorder that makes the chylomicrons not clear out of the blood. They should only be in your blood for a few minutes. So if you came in fasting for your cholesterol test, you shouldn't ever see these. The next thing we look at is after it gets rid of a bunch of triglycerides, we call this a VLDL. And if you look at a lipid panel, you'll be able to see that you can check out what's your VLDL. That's on every lipid panel. It's not something we usually talk about. When it gives away a few more of these triglycerides, so a bunch of triglycerides left for the chylomicron, and that turned into a VLDL. Then a few more triglycerides leave, and that turns into an IDL. And the next one is your LDL, or that bad cholesterol. And we'll point out, especially if you watched my video over the weekend, that these two are different sizes. They're both little bitty bad cholesterols, but they shouldn't be called that because neither of them are bad. They are just a smaller size. They are the lowest density. And this little turkey over here, he is a high density. We're not going to talk about him today. All right, so I'm going to show you a process that is a better way to look at cholesterol called a NMR, a nuclear magnetic resonance. So when I look at this chart, I'm going to use a patient's report to show you the ability to look at your cholesterol should never have been measured by good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Instead, it should have been measured by how big are those particles and what's inside them. Are they mostly cholesterol? Are they still left over with those triglycerides? And that ratio of what's inside those particles would be a much better guidance for how well our body is metabolically healthy. How well is it using the fat? Which is what you should want to know if you're on a ketogenic diet and you say, well, is my cholesterol bad? I'm like, well, let's talk about that. All right. Okay. So first of all, when we're looking at an NMR, so this test is an NMR, and I'll write that on the screen here in just a minute. But when you're looking at the NMR, the first thing you're going to look at is how many of those LDL lipoproteins, those low density lipoproteins, those blue circles filled with red and yellow things, how many of them are the smallest of size? And then what is the size of your LDL? So this is measured in nanometers. Oh, that's an N and this is an M. Nanometers. And if we keep it under 100, that's a good, that's about where, oh no, that's not, sorry, size is down here. See, there's the size. That's the nanometers. This one, is particle count for LDC. So again, how many of, that's calculated. Sorry. Don't look at that just yet. The next one is triglycerides, and all of your lipid panels, the regular ones that come from the doctor that you've had for the last 50 years, all of those have a triglyceride count. The total cholesterol, again, I don't like this much. Total cholesterol doesn't do me any good in most of the lipid panels. Here's where it starts to get a little bit better. How many of them are the bad guys, are the true bad guys, which are small, low density lipoproteins. So we want them, we want the number of these little small LDL particles to be under 500, and we want the size of them to be 20.5. I'm going to go through this in just a minute, so don't get overwhelmed with these numbers just yet. Let me take all this writing off of here. All you should remember is this is called an NMR. All right, so we have several NMRs taken by a patient over time that I want to show you in comparison to what was going on in her body, what happened to her cholesterol, those carrying agents that were circulating around her blood. Now, this gal was trying to be keto. She started on keto, and then she kind of fell off, and then she did dirty keto, and then she did a little bit better. And I think after the last 21-day course, she absolutely is at least headed in the right direction. But it does give testimony to how hard this can be when even when they're well educated, but they're doing it on their own. So, this panel, a couple of things I want you to look at is the number of LDL particles should be less than 1,000. Now, you'll notice none of hers came close to that. This number I'm not going to talk about right now because it does get a little complicated. We're going to try to keep this simple because this might be a 3-part lesson. So next week will be a different set of animations to try and deliver this message, because understanding cholesterol is also understanding your fat metabolism, how well your body is able to use the fat that you are consuming and the fat that your body makes. Which brings me to triglycerides. Now, triglycerides are one of the markers that have used I've never screwed this one up. Triglycerides should always be less than 100. Always be less than 100. Okay, so she only has one of them that made it less than 100 over these several checks. And it was the time when she was doing a good job on the ketogenic diet. Unfortunately, triglycerides over 150 are one marker that you're headed for insulin resistance. If you get it under 100, then I think you're doing a much better job. I actually like mine to stay under 75. I mean, it should never be higher than that. I can't remember what my last number was, but it wasn't too terrible. It was pretty close to my goal. But I want you to notice what happens when her triglycerides get better. Skip total cholesterol. It doesn't teach me anything. Don't look at that. These small LDL particles, if I could go back a slide, actually, I'll point that out in a minute. Again, the small LDL particles are the ones that got too small they hung out in their circulation too long, and those lipoproteins became the angry, small, tiny cholesterol particles that are responsible for heart attacks. So we want these small little turkeys to always be under 500. I think when I did my NMR test right before Christmas, my small LDL particle was 90 or less than 90, like so low you couldn't measure it. Meaning I'll show you why that number was so low in me and what we're going to tell this patient here that she needs to work on. All right, so again, the LDL particle size, we want it to be fluffy. We're going to go through that in just a second. And we also want, we'll show you why that size matters so much in just another slide here, so hang tight. C-reactive protein. Specifically, we want the highly sensitive C-reactive protein, also known as your cardiac C-reactive protein. We want that to be like 1. Anything under 3 we don't chirp about, but she only hit that goal again 1 time in all of these tests, the time when she was doing a good job on her ketogenic diet. Now, how do I know she was doing a good job on the ketogenic diet? If you look at any of my my speaking tour, when I was doing live, not live on YouTube, live actually on a stage in front of people, the theme that I had last year was that there is one lab that matters way more when you're trying to navigate the ketogenic diet, and that was the average blood sugar. And her average blood sugar right here was 5, which means that her hemoglobin A1C was 5, which means her average blood sugar was around 100. After that, 5.2 and another 5.2. Rather stable, but having a tough time getting it back down to 5 after her first initiation. But what I could tell you is that when her blood sugar was in that 5, in that lower area, her triglycerides were also a little lower. We're going to explain that in just a second. But her particle count up here was, well, definitely too high. All right, so let's see if we can break this down into a little bit more sense. The first thing I'm going to point out is when we are looking at the size of particles, or excuse me, the amount of particles found in your blood, you cannot get that with a lipid panel that you get regularly from your doctor. They have to order this nuclear magnetic resonance, which counts the particles that are the size of LDLs, that are the size of IDLs, and that are the size of VLDLs. Those particle numbers are in your blood are found in a range that is very predictive of what your insulin is doing. What is your blood sugar doing? So when I look at somebody who's insulin sensitive, so what that means is they're normal. Their body listens to insulin. The insulin goes up, it takes care of the sugar, it puts it where it's supposed to. And we look at, well, in their blood, what percentage, how many particles are responsible for carrying around the fat. So now, if you remember back on that first slide where I said, yep, it starts out at that really big chylomicron. He gives away some triglycerides. He becomes an IDL. He gives away some triglycerides, and he becomes the LDL. So here was VLDL. Here was your IDL. And here was your LDL. And the difference is the triglycerides that are present. So when you look at, well, how many of them are the LDLs? Most of what is in a normal person is your LDL cholesterol, that low density lipoprotein, the very smallest of those particles. So most people that are healthy, not diabetic, not insulin resistant, not pre-diabetic, they have about 1,200 of them are LDL particles. When you look at the particle number the complete particle number, so this is your LDL plus, there's your IDL plus your VLDL, okay? Total particle number, 1,200. If they are insulin resistant, which means they're headed for diabetes, which is what I would say this patient is headed for, that very high particle count, that very high amount of LDL cholesterol particles found in her blood, she's definitely on the spectrum for getting too much insulin in her system. Even though she was able to keep her hemoglobin A1C at 5.2 and average blood sugar around 115, I can see that she's using a lot of insulin to do that. And I can tell that because of her C-reactive protein that had steadily gone up and her triglycerides that had gone up. All right, so let's go to the final one. If you're diabetic, you have the most particles in your blood. You cannot seem to get the triglycerides to dish out of your little carrying agents swimming around your system, and instead you circulate. Those little carrying agents for fat, they're in your blood. They stay there longer than they're supposed to. They circulate far too long. We call it residency time. The residency time that they live in your blood, way too long when you are a type 2 diabetic. Really long when you're insulin resistant, which is what this patient had problems with. So when I look at what her numbers were for October of 2019, and this is just her LDL particle count. I mean, again, this was total particle count. This was her LDL, only the LDL particle count. She was over 2,400. Again, a sign of very high insulin. In fact, she has a higher particle count than most diabetics do. So then she got her game on. She did pretty good. She was following the ketogenic diet, really lowering the amount of blood sugar, and you can tell that because her hemoglobin A1C went down to 5. She got her total particle count down to just under 1,900. So the best one she had for all of those numbers. As she fell off the wagon a little bit, her particle count went up to over 2,200. And then by the last part of last year, she was still over 2,200 for her particle count. So let me just review what I tried to explain in this slide deck. So that VLDL, these particles right here, as they're circulating around this woman's bloodstream, you'll notice that in a healthy person, the triglycerides, meaning the number of red dots, I'll change my pen to red here, the number of red dots are the triglycerides, and it is dishing out triglycerides as she lowers the size of her VLDLs. She goes around to her liver cells, to her tongue cells, to her, bicep cells, to her bone cells, and they need fat. They need triglycerides. And so she dishes out these triglycerides. In an ideal world, that VLDL will empty out all of those triglycerides within 2 hours, meaning it goes from this size of a VLDL all the way down to here within 2 hours. It hangs out in this IDL equation, meaning with that many triglycerides, you can kind of see it's a much smaller number, maybe for another 4 hours. That's healthy. And then it gets down to the LDL, which is where I'm checking your blood at the 12-hour mark. So now it's been 12 hours since you've eaten. The fat that's come in needs to be delivered to the cells that need it. And we are going to measure what is the size that's left when we check that blood. And in a healthy person, you get rid of those triglycerides in the VLDL really quickly. So the size of your VLDL gets really close to an IDL before that 4 hours is up. And then it continues to say, anybody else, last little triglyceride, it hands it out to the last few cells that need it. And it gets small enough that we call it a LDL particle. But as soon as it is an LDL particle, we are recycling that back to the liver. We actually recycle some of the IDLs back to the liver, and we even recycle some of the VLDLs back to the liver. So we're getting particles out of the blood. The residency time spent in circulation of delivering fat is short. And when you are insulin sensitive, when your body is listening to insulin, you can see it get rid of that cholesterol in a quick hurry. When you look at the opposite of that, again, this one was the healthy patient. This one is the insulin resistant patient. They can't get rid of their triglycerides as much. Notice the size difference between here and here. Again, both of the particles came out and they're trying to dish out those triglycerides. Please take some triglycerides, take some triglycerides. And as he stops over at the pancreas cells, and then he stops over at the intestinal cells, and then they stop over at the kidney cells, and then the muscle cells. They're like, hey, I'm full. You gave me a lot yesterday. Oh, you know what? I'm full. I don't need any triglycerides. I don't have any place in the inn. I don't have any space for your resource. And because of that, these IDLs stay in circulation up to 10 to 12 hours. So now, when I draw your blood and I say, by golly, come in fasting to let me draw your blood, the VLDLs, these little turkeys here, they're bigger. They couldn't get rid of their triglycerides, so they're much bigger in size. And there's a whole bunch more of them. And they're filled with triglycerides. When I look at triglycerides and I see a whole bunch of them, instantly my mind says, uh-oh, they couldn't get rid of their triglycerides. They knocked on all the doors of the cells in their body to say, do you need some triglycerides? Do you need some triglycerides? Do you need some triglycerides? And all of them said, I'm still full from yesterday. I'm still full from yesterday. And unfortunately, by the time you get the IDLs made and now you get LDLs made, unfortunately, they're circulating around in their body for 5 to 6 days. That's a nightmare.
I'm not sure I understand.
My watch says it doesn't understand. That's a nightmare. That's a cholesterol that is far too high. That is an LDL particle that says, I give up. I can't get rid of my triglycerides. I can't get back into the liver to get recycled. I'm just going to go hide out inside the blood vessel, which is the beginning of an atherosclerotic, that's the beginning of a heart attack. So when people say, Doc, I've been on the ketogenic diet for a while. I want to know, is my cholesterol okay? I'm going to teach you how are you going to find out if you have a healthy VLDL, one that got rid of plenty of triglycerides and got down to that smaller size within about 2 hours, or if you're insulin resistant and your VLDL is still floating around at 6 to 12 hours and it did not get rid of the triglycerides it was supposed to. The other part that I want you to think about is this is supposed to be LDL. That a healthy LDL is actually bigger. And all of these little yellow circles in there, that is cholesterol. That's where the LDL, or bad cholesterol, got its name. It is filled with cholesterol. Why? Because it got rid of all the triglycerides. It did its job. And now it needs to recycle back into the liver. Now, before I do that, I want to go to, hold on one second here. I have, before I give away the little punchline here that I'm about to tell you, I want you to see this. So there are a couple things that I did last year, and I am just super thankful that I did them, that I want to announce that I'm doing it again this year. And it is, it's a fundraiser for my kids' school. It's something that I only do one time a year, and it's for a really good cause. The gal that won this last year, I want, in fact, Angela, can you post that link in the, I can't do it. I was going to have you post the link to the auction inside the chat. So this is a fundraiser for the kids, the boys' school that my son goes to, an all-boys Jesuit school. And I put in one item. Actually, I have two, but you should only bid on one. You can bid on two, I don't care. But the item, if you go to the link under I bid and you look under the Gaudiosa auction, I'm going to show you what I have on there. Last year, the gal that won it, her name is Lou, and I just loved the story that I got to learn because of her. So it starts at $125. Last year, it sold for a pretty good price. And although it comes with the books, two bags of the keto combo, it also comes with an hour consultation from me. All the money goes towards helping kids pay for the tuition to go to this school, which I think is raising some of the best men that I've seen in the 21st century, where they are, they have acts of service that they do. They are in a culture of other strong men of faith that they get to imprint from. And I couldn't be more proud to have my son go there, but also to do whatever fundraising I can do to help as many kids that can't afford to go there to be able to go there. So the auction is actually open as of right now, but it closes Saturday night at I think 10 o'clock Eastern time. So if you want a free or if you want a consult, it's not free to you, but it's my free donation. You can bid on this. It comes with a ForaCare and some test strips. It comes with a box of Pucker Up and then the Keto Combo, which is now off the sale. It's the last 2 bags we have of it, as well as some books. But most importantly, it's an hour consultation with me, and I would be happy to do that with you. All right, 2 other things that I was going to show you. KetoCon is still counting down for April 21st. My friend Robin, who lives right near me here, she lives near Tampa in St. Pete. We have tried for 3 weeks now to get our live conversation to happen. We're going to try again over the next couple weeks. Two busy women trying to get together. But if you are coming to KetoCon, I'm going to be there. I don't have a booth, but I am planning on lots of hangout time. So if you'd like to do that, I'll be there. And this conversation about cholesterol will be much more polished by then. All right, the two other things I wanted to point out. I'm going to point out something in just a minute that if you go to the Dr. Boz Favorites, I want you to see that this is where you find these. Okay, if you go onto the Dr. Boz page and then you push Dr. Boz Favorites, these are the places where some of the things that I really like, they end up here. All right, last but not least is my dashboard. And that is something that during our 21-day course, the gal that we're talking about on this case tonight, her blood sugars from the beginning of the course to the end of the course dramatically improved. They dramatically improved. Not because there was some magic sauce that we spread, throughout everybody's dietary plan, but because she was in community, using positive peer pressure in her classroom to improve her numbers. That when you look at her case today, she's been struggling since 2019 was the first time I saw her numbers came in, and the ability to get a reversal process of her particle size, the little particles that carry around cholesterol, they stem from how well she can control her blood sugar. Now I put mine up here. These are my numbers, and what I'm going to show you it's down here. No, it's not down here. Put 50 of them in there. I wanted to show the graph. Detail readings. I think I got to go back out. I don't want to do that today. All right, so I'm not going to show you the graph tonight. The point I was trying to show you is how well this dashboard worked for our classrooms. And you do not need to be affiliated with us to use this dashboard. This is dashboard by Keto Mojo, and they have been not only very supportive of everybody in the ketogenic community, but very powerful improvement on creating a community that speaks in numbers, which is what we teach in our 21-day course. We put everybody in a group. We put my numbers in every group that you can see. It's not just something I pretend to do either. If I want my cholesterol to be the numbers that I can show you, didn't used to be this good, but are better now. The first thing I improved was my blood sugar. The first thing that I got stabilized was my hemoglobin A1C. So let's go back to this case. We are going to go back to our keynote, and I am going to talk about, again, I want you to write down this little thing, nuclear magnetic resonance. That is the name of the blood test that checks the cholesterol particles, not just the lipid panel that says what are your triglycerides, what's your total cholesterol. This actually measures how many particles are in the VLDL status, how many particles are in the LDL status. And then it measures what is the size of that VLDL. Because if it's been in circulation too long, the VLDL stays too big. And that's a predictor of high insulin. That says you've got too much insulin going around. You cannot get rid of those triglycerides. That's what predicts a heart attack. It also says if you are able to get rid of your LDL, or the, quote, bad cholesterol quickly, then you're only going to have the fluffy cholesterol, the ones that don't have an association with a heart attack. But if they hang out in circulation for 6-7 days, the size of that LDL particle gets too small. And now it fits in between the epithelial cells in your blood vessels. And this is what predicts a heart attack. So if you look at what should be happening with every one of this is an example of LDL cholesterols, those tiny ones. They should be able to go into the receptors in the liver. This is your liver up here. And there is a cholesterol receptor. It should fit into that receptor and be recycled through the liver. Your IDL should do that. A few VLDLs should do that. And all of your LDLs should be recycling. When they get stuck in that circulation and their residency time in your blood is too long, they don't fit into the receptor because they get marked. One of the predictors for how that happens is to look at what is your hemoglobin A1C. If your hemoglobin A1C, which is your average blood sugar, is above 6, and I know that ours was, the gal that we're talking about, hers was only 5, and then it went up to 5.2. But I contend that it was using a lot of insulin to get there. So when people say, what's the key to looking at my LDL cholesterol? The first thing I talk about is, well, you see there are oxygen carrying spots in your blood. Those oxygen carrying spots get messed up when there is too much blood sugar around. When you have a hemoglobin A1C of 6, your average blood sugar is 126. When you have, let's see, this is the 5 for the gal who was there. When you have a hemoglobin A1C of 5, which means out of the 100 seats that are supposed to carry oxygen, 5 of them, 5% out of 100 are filled with sugar. They're glycated hemoglobin A1C. That's what this is. And that A1C is an average of 97. I think there is a way, this is the part that I was trying to foreshadow on my website, is hemoglobin A1C is something that you can check on your own. That when this gal came to me and said, well, what should I be worried about a hemoglobin A1C, or excuse me, should I be worried about my cholesterol? The answer is, yeah, she has a lot to worry about. But in order for us to make sense of what her cholesterol is doing, she needs to have a stable blood sugar. As the blood sugar rises and the blood sugar runs into the storage problem, much like the triglycerides were not able to be doled out from that cholesterol, what happened before that is that the storage for sugar got too full. So as her blood sugar went higher, came out of the 4.5 into that, average of 80, then average of 85, then average of 90. Now she's got a hemoglobin A1C of 5. And although every single textbook will say, no problem, it's a hemoglobin A1C of 5, you're fine. But 5.2 isn't fine. 5.4 isn't fine. The trend upward says, no, it's taking so much insulin to keep that sugar controlled that we have every storage unit filled to the point where we can't take triglycerides, a unit of fat, another unit of energy, because we have stuffed every corner filled with strings of sugar. That sugar, that glycogen, is stuffed in the liver, it's stuffed in the muscle, it's stuffed in every cell that needs energy, so much that we can't fill any more fat either. And when people say, well, I started on the ketogenic diet last month, I wonder what my cholesterol is. I'm like, don't do that. Do not check your cholesterol on the ketogenic diet until you have 3 months in a row that show you a stable hemoglobin A1C. That I have a pretty good sense of what this patient's blood cholesterol is doing, that she has a problem. She has way too many particles of cholesterol that are not dishing out the triglycerides. Her blood sugar is too high. Do I think if she was in the 21-day course every day for a year, where she had a tribe of people, she was checking in, that if she fell off the wagon, she got right back on. I do think we could lower her particle number size. Do I think it's enough that it would prevent a heart attack? I don't know, until she lowers the blood sugar and keeps it stable. In the meantime, she's making far too many particles of LDL cholesterol. Let me just take you back to that one slide. Let me go here. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to her numbers here quick. Okay, let me come over here and push this again. So when you look at her numbers, the LDL particle size, shoot, it's not going to let me write it, I don't think. Oh, no. No. Don't do that. So let's just blow this up so I don't have to do that again. So the LDL particle size should be less than 20. Or should be greater than 20. It should be fluffy. And she hit that right there in October of 2019. Actually, since October of 2019, we've changed it that the LDL particle size should be greater than 20.8, not 20.5. So you'll see that metric has changed. See if I can make this turkey go. So the first time she checks it, it's 20.5, right on the mark, right there at 20 in October of 2019. So a few particles are getting outside that circulation. They're getting stuffed into the artery wall. When she's doing a good job, when the A1C is averaging that 97, that blood sugar of 97, which is a hemoglobin A1C of 5, then her C-reactive protein, her inflammatory marker lining the insides of her blood vessels, went from 6 to 2.0. I wish I could draw that for you, but my pen's not working. But then she fell off again. And her blood sugars went up again. Now they're at 5.2. So now we're at a average blood sugar of around 113 or something. And her C-reactive protein went from 2, which is good, not great. Great is less than 1. It's good. But hers went up to 7.83. At the same time, her triglycerides went up, and the size of those LDL cholesterol is now sunk back down to 20.6. I know it's not yellow in this chart, but it is high. We want it to be 20.8. So then she does get she's on the mend here a little bit in August of 2022 because the particle size got fluffy again. She's recycling a little better. Her triglycerides are down to 128, not as good as they were in May of 2021. And the number of small LDL particles, again, you don't want to have those. She went from 1,300 down to 1,000. Now, it's not the 425 that she was able to hit when she was doing a good job, when her insulin was lowered. And you say, well, doc, how should you manage this? And the answer isn't to just guess. It is to check your hemoglobin A1C 3 consecutive months, getting it as close. I mean, where do I like mine? I like my hemoglobin A1C between 4.5 and 5. And if you've been watching this show long enough, you'll know that last fall, after moving across the country and moving the businesses and having kids and a lot of life in a year and a half, I had checked my hemoglobin A1C like the year prior, and it was, lovely 4.7 or 4.8, and then it was 5.6. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's not good. And I've been working really hard to say, no, I know my blood sugars get low in this fasting state, but it's what it takes to really bring down that average hemoglobin A1C. My particle count of number of small, dense LDL particles, less than 90, so low they couldn't measure them because I recycle them so quickly. That didn't always happen. When my A1C was higher, my LDL particle size was higher as well. So the punchline here is to know that you cannot guess what your particle size is or what your particle count is. You must measure it. The NMR, nuclear magnetic resonance. Your doctor can order it. You'll need to ask them to do that. I paid cash for mine, and it was like $80 for the whole panel. So it's not cost prohibitive, but many people will not have them. They won't be offered it because it is not standard, and some insurances aren't going to cover that. But before you spend the money on that, 3 months in a row, get your hemoglobin A1C stable. When it's stable, then you can make sense out of what's happening with your particles of cholesterol. Before that, you're measuring a bunch of noise that it will change so dramatically when the blood sugars are going up and down that I contend you're wasting your money to check your NMR until your blood sugars are stable for 3 consecutive months. All right, let's get over to some questions, and then I need to get to a pole vault. Track meet. Okay, let's go over to questions, and we're going to start with the. I thought we had a uric acid one. well, anyway, something's changed since I left here. That's okay. I began eating keto diet 2 weeks ago, says Chris G. Have been in ketosis most of the time. Yesterday, my triglycerides were in the 700s. Liver function was elevated. Is this normal? Again, you're so close to a flood of incoming fat that all you're telling me is, 2 weeks in, you're going to have some crazy numbers. And you have a lot of work to do. But I highly recommend, and I mean this without being salesy, that you read the book, ketoCONTINUUM. That book over my shoulder right there, ketoCONTINUUM, is what I use in my clinic. It comes with a workbook. It comes with a book. If you don't like to read, there's an online course that you can listen to little videos. You can peck around YouTube, I know, but if you're looking at a triglyceride of 700, first of all, I would have never looked. All you're going to find is moving fat inside that person. And yes, we can measure it in the lab. That's true. That's what you did. But to say, are you going in the wrong direction? You can't say that at 2 weeks. You have to head in this direction and stay stable enough, keeping your blood sugars stable. What I would do, I would check your A1C, because it will be so much better in a month. And it'll be even better in 2 months if you stay the course. That workbook and that book were not just accidentally popped out of my brain. This is what patients did over and over and over again. And if you could just stop them from making the same mistake that you see all of these patients making, because there wasn't a good guidance for how to do a ketogenic diet to get you to health, to get you off of blood pressure medicines, to get the cholesterol where it really is healthy, that you don't need to take medications. Well, it has some rules. The human body has some rules. And I know that it's really easy to hate on doctors and say, they told me wrong. I took a statin for 20 years or whatever. They were doing the best that they could with the information, but we have new information now. And I would read the book. I would read the book and follow the workbook, because if you've got weight to lose and you've got triglycerides of 700, you definitely need to be monitored. All right, let's go to the next question. That's a great question, actually. Next question is Daraluz. Okay, if I get an NMR lipid panel done at the end of a 72-hour fast, will this give me a good look, or will testing after 12 hours fast be better? A 72-hour fast does send people into a wave of different mobility for fat. So what you're trying to measure at the end, or in an NMR, in any cholesterol test, is how well did we take the fat in and distribute it to where it needs to be. How much of it was stuck in residency time is what we're trying to measure. And now we can get a pretty good look at that by how small or large the cholesterol is, the lipoproteins are at the time of the blood test. But you're going to have a lot better reproducibility of saying, where is my cholesterol at now? What is my cholesterol doing at this season of my life? If you stick to a 12-hour fast, 12 to 18-hour fast is a fine fast for an NMR. What I don't like people to do is come in 72 hours fasted, because it is a completely different mobility of fat at the 72-hour mark than it is 12. And although we could make sense of it, it's a much more complex equation. And as you can see by this last hour, there's plenty of complexity here. There's plenty of things that the doctor has to think of. So we want to be able to measure this over time. Were you able to get that particle size down? Were you able to get that C-reactive protein down? Were you able to get that the LDL cholesterols recycled back up in through the liver? And the answer to that is, well, measure it at the same approximate time in a fast. Like 12 to 18 hours, not 72. That is a really good question. I get that a lot. I wish I could clip that and put it somewhere, because I was like, go watch this video. All right, let's go to Private Susie. Private Susie is the one who had, this is the question I was thinking of. Okay, so Private Susie, I have chronic gout. I am on keto. I cannot tolerate allopurinol. Is fasting or eating sardines going to trigger gout or raise my uric acid, which is 8? I have trouble producing ketones. I'm at 0.5. Okay, so that's the other reason why I was going to that. Favorites page. So go to see this thing out here, bozmd.com. Click on favorites, and you're going to want to order uric acid strips, because you can check your own uric acid in your house, and you will. It is a difficult lab to change. Much like hemoglobin A1C, it's a slow, steady grind of improvement that changes that. And if you read either of the books, ketoCONTINUUM or Any Way You Can, you'll see a chapter in both of those about here's what happens with stones in our body. Whether it's a kidney stone or a uric acid crystal, those crystals didn't form overnight. To undo them takes a shift in chemistry. A ketogenic state, a chronic ketogenic state, is a very good way to reverse the uric acid that's been stored in your body. But if you've got a ketone level that's at 0.5 and stays at 0.5, that's great. That's a good beginning. But to reverse gout, you've got to be plunging and surging that state of ketosis into a much higher level to be able to reverse gout. Where I see people end up in a problem with their gout is they go in and out of ketosis, they binge, and then they try to fast, and they binge, and then they try to fast, and they binge and try to fast. And what you're doing then is you're kind of growing that uric acid crystals. You're changing the chemistry back to the crystal building phase. In a state of persistent ketosis, you will melt those uric acid. You'll actually melt the kidney stones. The problem is if you've got a kidney stone hanging out in your kidney, it's usually attached to the wall of the kidney, like inside the ureter. And if you melt it from the bottom up, no problem. You won't even notice it. But if you happen to melt it from the top and it falls off of its anchor, well, then it rolls down your ureter, and then you can end up in the ER. So don't blame the ketogenic diet. This has been brewing in your system for a long time, and to reverse it means a persistent state of ketosis. We do this course twice a year, which is an intense course that I take people through and say, this is what I would do in my clinic. You want to know how to do the ketogenic diet well enough to reverse uric acid? Get in a tribe, follow these rules. You will have the tools to reverse medical problems in your pocket, in your brain. You will have done them. We walk you through it. We do it as a group. And we only do it twice a year because it's hard on us too. It's very intense. But I have no doubt that my NMR cholesterol will be a good again and again as we check it year after year. One more question, and then I'm going to go watch my little guy pole vault. Okay, go back to questions. Here we go. So last question. Where does the Lp(a) fit in? Okay, that's actually, I skipped kind of over that because I was like, I wonder if anybody remembers that in the questions. So if you look at this slide right here, right here, see how this has horns on it? This is an LDL cholesterol that ended up with an extra attachment on there. Okay, it only does that when it has been in residency, in the circulation way too long. That you get the size of, here's what a nice fluffy LDL would look like. It's been in residency time, it gets to be about this size. We turn it purple when it is oxidized, which is another not good thing. And then we add horns when it has an Lp(a). And so when you saw us try to say, well, can we recycle this? Can we take this LDL cholesterol back up into the liver? You'll notice that Lp(a) doesn't fit into the receptor, so it cannot be recycled. So it is the most deadly version of that low density lipoprotein is when you put horns on it. That's Lp(a). And you can do a test for that too. All right. Once again, I do appreciate all of your comments. I read them even if I don't comment back to them. And I use your questions and your comments on what I will do videos on, what I think you're asking me. So thank you for leaving comments. We will have a a video at the end of this screen, which will not be on the live, and it only happens after we reprocess, so give us a good 20 minutes, that shows you what happens when we clog arteries. And it's a really good one that fits into this discussion. Again, I really would love to see folks bidding on the donated consultation that I'm using for the school. We'll try to put that out on Instagram, on Facebook, and probably a message here on YouTube as well. The auction's open. It ends at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and all proceeds go to this school. Again, something I'm very thankful that my son gets to be a part of.